Welcome everyone to episode 2 of Crypto Today, powered by DXone. Today we have a special episode about cryptocurrency regulation with our legal expert, Scott McKenzie. Thank you for taking the time to join us at Crypto Today. Could you tell us about your background, Scott?
So my name is Scott McKenzie. I'm the CLO for Asset Geek Limited, the holding company for DXone. And of course, we have other companies in our holding company as well. I'm an American and I went to an American law school and I practiced law in the United States and I'm barred in the United States. And then over the course of the last few years, I became more and more interested in the crypto community. I mean, I started saying to myself, here's a group of people and an industry where exciting things are happening. At times, people were very, very accepting. They were really open to learning more and to hearing different viewpoints. So, I mean, for me, I kind of started engaging myself in the crypto and trying to learn more myself about the industry. And then eventually I shifted to working with consulting and helping with some crypto startups. And that's how I met Luciano, the CEO of DXone. And after some time, Luciano said, Scott, we could really use someone with a legal background to come help us out. Would you come work for us? And I said, sure, I'd be very pleased. And so far I have been.
What is your role at DXone?
So my role is multifaceted. And like any startup, of course, I'm asked to be on a lot of different teams and asked to jump in and help a lot of different people, which is one of the things that I really love about the company. And one of the things I love about working with startups is all the opportunity to try new things. My role I see as primarily having a couple of different components. One, of course, is just the sort of day in, day out management of personnel, making sure that everyone has an employment contract, making sure that if we have NDAs to review, either sent by our clients or sent on our behalf of people such as investors, that we get those reviewed and get those signed. The other part is, of course, sort of helping everyone on all the different teams, for example, in marketing, just to make sure that we're saying things in a way that both comports with the regulations in which we operate, but also just sort of minimizes our risk and liability. So, for example, we wouldn't want to put out a press release, that inadvertently promised amazing return. Can happen, but, we want to be able to limit our liability, if Bitcoin goes down. Can't promise our investors that every trade they make will be a positive one. And then I think a third element of my job is to sort of act as sort of the liaison lawyer, as it were, between all of our different legal counsel that we have in several different places. So, for example, we have a security token sale right now, and that was regulated through the country of Liechtenstein. So we have a lawyer in Liechtenstein who I'm in touch with fairly regularly about the different aspects of our risk. But of course, our exchange is in Cyprus. So at the same time there, we have a legal counsel in Cyprus who I communicate with to stay abreast of what changes in that country might be as well. In that way, I can kind of piece this together as, we have different questions come up with in different places, contact, legal counsel and sort of coordinate the work happening in each of those different countries, which I think helps us kind of have a more consistent approach rather than just our CEO trying to kind of digest questions and from different lawyers and different demands. So I guess I sort of see that having 3 different parts to my job here at DXone.
How does it feel to be a lawyer for a crypto startup?
It's a horrible job. Don't ever do it. They might offer you this job one day. Turn them down. I think it feels really good. I mean, I'll be honest, it's a very challenging job because we have so much going on, particularly as a young startup. We just have a lot of different tasks day in and day out, from the mundane of kind of handling onboarding contracts and making sure that everyone's reviewed all the NDAs, but to getting much more challenging questions around can we accept investor money in this country, or things like that touch on securities law, much more complicated. So I think that it's a rewarding and challenging job. And I think it's very rewarding for me, not only to see my team at DXone succeed to achieve our goals and to exceed them, but it's also really rewarding to see us be able to sort of promote and push forward the whole crypto industry, especially the kind of a niche which we are in. We're able to provide really the best trading experience. That's really rewarding. So it feels good. It's a job I'm very proud of.
Why is regulation important for crypto?
Okay, well, I think I talked about this a little bit maybe in my last response about the importance of regulation in crypto. I think in part because it sort of shows that we're a maturing industry, and regulation is kind of, it's what traditional financial powers, companies, their bread and butter, really, right? They work pretty well within the regulations and often in many cases really work hand in hand in helping write those regulations. So I think it really shows that we're able to match that, to be able to say we can do the same thing. We have X experts that can help you write new regulations around blockchain and new regulations around crypto. And, and that we can, when needed, we can fit into the existing regulations. So I think that's really important to kind of aid the both mainstream adoption at the sort of institutional level, because I think that, when you're talking to a major, company, you can't come in and say like, oh, we don't really pay attention to regulations. We're not regulated at all. We don't really have anyone that looking over us. I think that they won't get you very far with those kind of companies. And I think that's also just really key for retail investors as well. I think that, if they don't see someone's behind, of course, we have a lot of retail people who like to buy and trade and sell and engage in cryptocurrency exchanges. But I think for the really true retail broad adoption, I think it's important to have someone behind. If for no other reason also, because I think, as we saw in 2017, there were so many, frankly, scams. There's just a fine line between, just bad startup and scams. Some people are just, very optimistic and not very realistic. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, at the same time, people lost their money. And so I think sometimes having that regulation, although that can kind of stifle feelings about innovation and kind of pushing things forward, I also think that, the flip side is, it also protects people. And I think that, there's a certain risk appetite amongst anybody, but I think regulation is sort of one way to sort of helps reduce the risk that engaging with any cryptocurrency or any crypto company has. So, if given the choice between trying to improve our risk profile by, as an industry, adopting more regulations, more transparency, that seems like a quicker and better route than trying to get everyone in the world to adopt a much more pro-risk viewpoint. Instead of trying to make everyone risk takers, we can just try to find ways to address those who are maybe more risk takers.
How does it compare to DeFi and decentralized protocols?
We're talking here about the relationship between regulation, risk, and DeFi, which is really growing in popularity right now. And I think that the DeFi, to me, speaks to a very interesting group of people who are interested in crypto. And what I think you can see a lot through crypto, and this is true if you're looking at broader conversations around institutions in the world, faith and reliance on traditional institutions has been eroding lately, caused by a lot of factors. But particularly in the financial industry, people who have less and less faith that banks are really like the only group that they want to go to in addressing this. But, the flip side is that, and there's plenty of cases where banks have been accused of, aiding money laundering at a broad, wide scale, or insider trading, or profited from any number of illegal activities. And I think that the issue is that kind of also creates that people sort of push back and say, well, we don't want to have anything to do with this regulation. We're trying to kind of create a new community for ourselves. And so I think there's sort of this interesting situation where we as a crypto community here, I'm speaking, we're sort of grappling with this sort of twin issue of sort of not only, to what extent should we wish to adopt and wish to engage with the traditional system of state regulation, at the same time, should we be maybe trying to set up our own industry specific regulations, or should we just ignore them completely? And so I think DeFi is kind of this, to me, a very interesting situation where, very specifically kind of around this idea of lending and also having, earning interest on your money. It's a way of sort of saying, it's very explicit about, we don't need banks, we won't need this traditional kind of top-heavy infrastructure, which of course, bites into your margins quite a lot. At the same time, it also sort of, I think as we've seen in DeFi, there's, when the code isn't audited, when the founders maybe haven't been well vetted, there's been plenty of scams already and plenty of cases where people have lost quite a lot of money. You talk about something like yield farming. There's a very specific group of people who are profiting, and they profit because they have a very clear understanding about the relationship between these different protocols, the way that the smart contracts are set up. And then there's a group that's, probably kind of also sort of does not have that information, does not well understand that information. Complicated, I think. A lot of people who might not really have a very good understanding of the risks that they're taking. And, I think one aspect of, there's a lot of talk. For example, people are in the United States very upset because of the accredited investor rules, which say that, you have to have a certain net worth or a certain high income or prove that you have a certain intelligence about the market before you can make certain types of investments, usually related to startups, where you often see this. But, what's interesting about crypto is that, basically, and we have plenty of stories, out there, but anyone whatsoever can mortgage their house. They can take their entire life savings and they can put it on any exchange, and even with little protection and little knowledge, about the market, and they might lose it. They might lose their house, And I think that's one thing that people don't acknowledge very well in the crypto industry, is that although the regulations often do bite against sort of innovation and freedom to be able to invest your money where you want, the stated purpose of most regulations in most countries is also to protect the average retail investor, to make sure that millions of people don't lose their life savings, which would be, disastrous for them. It'd be disastrous for them, and it'd be disastrous for the crypto industry, and it'd be disastrous for, whoever's kind of left on the other side of picking up where that would fall off, if that means that people's families have to support, their people have to move back in with their parents, or if that means that, you have to support your parents when they lost all their life savings, or if that means that, the state has to step in and make everybody whole, but, consequently might be raising taxes on the rest of the country. That's kind of what these regulations are about. I mean, they're much more complex, I think, than people going to give them credit for, to say in the crypto industry, like, oh, it's a one-sided thing, like, oh, we're just looking at kind of like, just the laws, and like, this is just kind of like a checkbox thing, which you have to kind of engage in. Like, do you meet this? Do you have this? Do you have the right paperwork? Do you have the proof that you have engaged in, the correct KYC or whatever that is? And I think that's how a lot of people think about the laws and regulations in crypto, but I think it's a much more complex and a much more fluid situation than a lot of people give it credit for. Would regulation address some of the problems in DeFi? I'm not sure. I really like the kind of like central idea of DeFi, but the thing is, I've just noticed, and I don't want to talk about it like tons of people, but people talk about it in like such a weird way, like evil bankers were like preventing them from doing something. And I'm always like, well, what were you trying to do? Like, and I'm like, were you trying to like buy a car and they wouldn't like give you a loan? Oh no, that's not the problem. Oh, so you wanted a house or something? Like, what were you going to the bank for? And they don't really have a thing they were trying to do with the money. Like, and I'm always like, well, what's in it for you exactly? And there's never seems to be quite a good answer. To me, it always just struck me as like a very complex, interestingly built casino, which I'm fine with. I just don't like casinos very much.
On the other side of the spectrum, could you explain what an STO is?
It's interesting that there's just not a consensus around what is, what do different tokens mean? What are different tests being used? People tried out like a Howley test, in the United States or something. But I mean, it's not a global standard or anything. People in the EU, you don't have to pay any attention to American law. They have their own laws in the EU. I mean, there's associations, part of the International Token Standards Association, who are working not just on definitions of something like an STO, but how to really classify any token across a number of different vectors. And to me, though, I mean, I think part of this is an STO. To me, what it really is it's a sale of a token that is the hinge is that it's regulated. A lot of people will tell you that what it hinges on is the token, represents some security. That is to say, a debt interest, a participation, and that you could trade it. But to me, I think the real question about security tokens is it being issued legally under the purview of some existing framework, or is it being issued by the company, without any relation to permission by the relevant authorities? I think that's, to me, really kind of where it hinges. Otherwise, it's, if you haven't paid attention to all the rules, and you don't have the relevant, the relevant approvals, and really, the relationship with the regulators in whatever jurisdiction you're in, then you're just an ICO. You're just a regular 2017 ICO. You're just kind of doing something on your own, and you're just sort of issuing it. And you might call it a utility token. You might call it, whatever, money or whatever. But if you don't have the permission, you're just doing whatever. You're just kind of going off on your own. And that's one thing I think that DXone has done a really good job about. From the beginning, I know that was crucially important to Luciano, known as the CEO, was just find jurisdiction to issue the token that really respected and understood crypto. And that's what he found, I think, in Liechtenstein, but also to really make sure that he had all the T's crossed, the I's dotted, and that he was really doing the most professional and serious job possible in the working with the regulators, with the FMA there in Liechtenstein, to make sure that everything was done as they needed and as they wanted throughout the life of this token. So I mean, there's open communication with the FMA about what they're looking for, what they need. So I think that's really important.
From a regulatory standpoint, how easy was it to launch an STO in 2020?
Maybe one piece of good news to the crypto industry, from our perspective in 2020, is that at least in certain jurisdictions, and here again I lean on Liechtenstein since that's our experience, the mainstreaming of crypto and STOs is going much better than I think might be expected. I know we spoke to a number of law firms, a number of lawyers who are barred there in Liechtenstein to help us with the process. And, a lot of them had competence, to be honest. It wasn't a matter of us looking for the one who might have a clue, but there was quite a number who had experience. I thought that was really nice to see the bar of Liechtenstein had that kind of depth. It was something that was maybe a little bit unexpected. Further, when we were able to select the lawyer who we're working with, they were able to do a very professional job. And I mean that both from the total output of our prospectus, which I think really clearly explains, our STO offering, but also just in working with them. All of our communications, everything was simple and easy, not overly easy. It was not perhaps the sort of reinventing the wheel, as it were. It really felt much more like we were able to just sort of base ourselves on the existing system and then kind of move from there, which I thought was really heartening. And then I think as we moved into sort of the overall sort of deployment launch side, I think it went really quite well. I think that like with so many people have probably experienced, people who have done any type of public offering, you have to constantly kind of be working with the regulators, exchanging emails about, what is your marketing plan, in which countries will you be doing your raise, make sure that that's all quite clear. But once we had that down, I was really kind of impressed a little bit with how smoothly it's gone. I think it's gone much, much better than maybe what some people might have expected from a regulatory side point of view. Of course, as a lawyer, I was probably expecting the worst, and you might get a different perspective from a CEO, and you might get a different perspective from people who were maybe going into their STO expecting this to be a little bit more like an ICO Wild West. I just issue the tokens and then boom, they're all going to get bought up really quickly by investors, and we're going to, just put out a bunch of Facebook and Telegram groups and that'll be fine. That wasn't the perspective that Luciano Nonis, the CEO of DXone, has taken. So he's been much more serious, much more professional about this than a lot of people. And I think that really shows in the ways that we've been able to target investors, specifically around the areas that we have permission to focus on, and the way that we've kind of gone about the whole process. We've been very realistic about our timelines, very realistic about our budget, and very realistic about kind of what we were looking to get. And I think that by having those kind of serious professional expectations, I think that sort of sets a good stage. People don't get overly frustrated with a regulator because they don't get a response in a week or two. People understand. Regulators like the FMA are extremely busy. So, if you don't hear back from them for a while, that's just the reality of it. So I think that the whole process has gone really quite better in 2020 than I had expected. So I hope, our STO doesn't finish until the end of November. I guess I should say I have high hopes that I'm not jinxing our process.
What's your thoughts on the future of crypto?
If you talk to people in crypto, they often keep saying things, especially around STOs. They kept saying 2019 is the year of STOs. 2020 is the year of STOs. And I think that maybe the reality is people are starting to realize that, we're not going to have 1 year where this magic thing, the STO, just becomes widespread and that everyone is adopting it, and that everyone is using it. And, consequently, that everyone who's invested, all the investments are going to go 100x or something, I think people are realizing that that's not really the case. But, I think that maybe in losing that kind of short-term gain, because we kind of recognize that's not a sustainable gain, I think that the reward is that we're getting a more long-term, slow adoption. I think that, we're seeing lots of small positive signs, incremental steps, that are being taken at the kind of institutional level to say the underlying technology of blockchain makes a lot of sense. It makes the possibility of more secure transactions a reality. And I think that, we're seeing it also kind of push the not particularly innovative, cutting edge banking industry forward, banking financial industry. There's a lot, you can point to lots and lots of different examples about, slow transactions and the length of cost and length of time for a wire transfer, for example. And so I think that we're kind of seeing crypto in that sense. I think we're going to see it really take off. off, and I've often felt like, we might end up finding sort of the widespread adoption, but I'm not sure that, we'll find it in that sense of having kind of the whole world going crypto crazy, and saying, oh my God, I've got the virus. I just think that we'll see people sort of say, more casually, like, oh, yes, now we have the digital dollar, or now my bank is, using blockchain technology to, perhaps behind the scenes, perhaps in ways that you're not even aware of, but to secure transactions. And I think we'll see more like that rather than necessarily, the whole world, everybody on earth, or, all your friends and neighbors, I guess, investing maybe perhaps in the next STO and hopes that it'll create the real life state like But I also think since we are a crypto exchange, I think that we're finding more and more young people. I mean, you can look at something like popular app, at least in the United States, Robinhood, that is very popular amongst people a little bit younger set who are taking a little more active role in their money management, their financial futures. And as to say, instead of perhaps just investing in, whatever passive index fund, or they're just taking, a percentage of all the major stock. What people are doing, with something like Robinhood, they're really sort of using it, it's a very user-friendly interface. And I think you're going to see the same thing happen with exchanges, perhaps. DXone, we offer a very nice mobile interface. It's very simple for people to be able to just sort of, pop up on their phone and kind of take a look at the, at the price of things. And, I think that maybe the future of crypto is also kind of follow on that, and just say, you'll see more people who are just able to kind of, say, well, look, I want to have more control over my own financial destiny. And in doing so, for me, that means actively spending time, researching companies like you were talking earlier that, you read all the material you can possibly find about a company, and I think that's actually quite good. But I think that really makes you kind of like a much more involved person in your own financial decision making, that you're kind of active in making the choices and deciding what's right for you, what's, obviously not right for you. And I think maybe, the future of crypto will provide that as well. It'll provide more people the opportunity and the ability to kind of make those sort of choices themselves.
Is there anything else you'd like to add from your end?
There's kind of like final thoughts, that I'm really proud to be working with DXone. I'm really proud of the work that the team has put together over the last several years. And, I think that the real proof of that is that, you can go to our website, www.dxone.com, and you can make an account. We're not a place where you can just jump on and trade right away. You have to pass KYC first. And, we're happy to have people who are interested in perhaps, becoming investors. Of course, the prospectus is there on our website, which they can read. And of course, if they are, qualified, we'd certainly be interested in looking at that. But, the regulations and everything, we lay it out right up front. And so we're happy to have people, I say this from the legal side, but, we're really happy to have users coming on, and we're really happy to have potential investors approaching us. And I can say that, I'm really proud of that. We've done our best in sort of being able to provide the most legally compliant experience that we can. And I think that's really important. I know that, the design team and our development team, they all do their part, and I think together we have a really great product that we're really proud of. So really appreciate the opportunity and time to speak with the audience here today. Appreciate all their questions, and really been nice having this chat.
Thanks, Scott, for giving us a new perspective on crypto regulation. And thank you for joining us today on Crypto Today. Please follow our social channels for the next episode. Be sure to visit DXone.com and experience next-generation crypto intelligence and trading.